Hey, and we are live. Hello. I am going to, before I introduce myself, make sure that I um, go live on Instagram as well. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. So, every week I do a little brain health training for this series I'm calling Thursday Thoughts, right? These are my Thursday thoughts, and we started the series a while back on Instagram and YouTube. I'm sorry, on LinkedIn and YouTube. So Instagram doesn't really have the history. But for those of you who are on Instagram, you could check out the history on my YouTube channel, Samantha Salmon. You can also see it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Raw Food Meal Planner, all those social media handles. I am Samantha Salmon. I am a certified brain optimization coach, and today we are diving into inflammation and how inflammation affects the brain. So we started off a few weeks ago on April 25th just with the overall of how to reverse cognitive decline, right? If we have family members who are experiencing Alzheimer's or dementia, and we ourselves, maybe we're forgetting things, right? Maybe information, maybe we're trying to study something, learn something, or even study a speech we need to do for work or something like that. You have a talk and you're trying to remember lines, and you're finding it very difficult to hold the information. That's one part of cognitive decline, right? Constantly forgetting your keys, forgetting if you lock the door, that type of thing. That's one aspect of cognitive decline. But then there's also the mental health aspect. We're still in May, Mental Health Awareness Month. The brain is the organ of everything you think, feel, and do, how you behave, how you interact with your loved ones, with your coworkers, out on the street, right? And if your brain is not healthy, right, you are more likely to have issues in your life. Unfortunately, in our society, we lack a lot of empathy for folks because when something is wrong with their brain, we cannot see it. And so we just call them bad people, right? When we forget things, we're not like bad. It's like, oh, you forgot this thing, whatever, until it gets really, really bad. And we're like, oh my gosh, does this person have dementia? Do they have Alzheimer's, right? But with things like anxiety, depression, ADD symptoms, symptoms of aggression and irritability, rudeness, things like this. All of this has to do with the functioning of the brain. Even the ability to have empathy has to do with brain resilience. There's something called brain reserve, which I talk about in some of my trainings. So on April 25th, when we started having this conversation, about what can we do to keep our mental health intact, right? Mental health to me is not just about all the negatives that could happen, right? Yes, you could enter into Alzheimer's and dementia and, bipolar, schizophrenia, all this stuff, right? However, a lot of this stuff, Alzheimer's, dementia, takes like 50 years to develop, just like cancer takes 10 years to show on a diagnostic test. Type 2 diabetes takes about 7 years to show on a diagnostic test. These types of issues, they're not instant. It's not like people just flip, right? People don't just flip. There is a deterioration happening of the brain. And, as I was saying earlier, if someone walked in, that had a sprained ankle, we have empathy for that person. Oh man, here, let me get you a seat. Here, let me help you walk over to this chair, whatever, right? Because they have a sprained ankle or a broken ankle or something like that. We can see that. We have understanding. We have empathy. But when it comes to matters of brain health, because we don't see it, there is generally a lack of empathy there. And so I'm hoping that these trainings will kind of shed some light on what's happening when you are experiencing certain things out in the world, and even in the workspace. Not everything you have to take so seriously, right? You're interacting with someone and that person maybe seems rude, they seem angry, they seem irritable. Not only could they be having a bad day, but their brain could be under a lot of physical toxic stress, right? Because we don't only get when we talk about stress of the body, it's not just psychological. Yes, there's psychological stressors, there's emotional stressors, there's also physical stressors, right? That can come from toxic air around us. Maybe some of us are working in chemical environments, right? Like one case that I heard of a man who was on the brink of divorce. His wife felt like he was just such a jerk. It turns out that his brain had tons of holes in areas, not the physical tissue having holes, but global issues where blood flow was not getting there, because he was working in a finishing plant where they finished furniture with chemicals. Most of the furniture that we have in our homes are finished with formaldehyde and other types of chemical solvents, and he was working in that environment, not taking the proper safety precautions. And so he ended up getting a transfer in his job. He didn't quit his job. He just moved to a separate area doing different work for the same company, and it improved and saved his marriage, right? This is how serious what I'm talking about is, right? Brain health. Taking our brain health seriously can have cascading domino effects within us, around us, how we feel, our ultimate experience of happiness, of joy, of fulfillment, right? Which you lack when you're experiencing chronic anxiety, depression, that type of thing. That chronic anxiety and depression could come from physical toxic stress to the brain, right? It doesn't just have to be emotional or psychological or even spiritual, and which I go more into depth in a free training that I'm doing called Beat Stress Eating, because this is really relevant to folks who deal with unhealthy food addiction, which is driving obesity crisis, driving chronic disease epidemic throughout the world. But I'm mostly specifically concerned about Americans here in this country, and how bad the numbers have become, especially with our young people. I speak to a lot of mothers and grandmothers who tell me, I can't eat healthy because my husband brings in this and my kids don't like this. And it's like, we really need to stop it right now. We need to take responsibility, okay? Are you the leader of the ship? Are you driving the bus or are you on the back seat, right? I need adults to be adults and like man up and woman up and lead their families, lead their households. You cannot have children dictating how the kitchen should be run, right? And when I grew up, it wasn't really a democracy, right? It wasn't a democracy. And the reason is this is not just in jest, right? There is some biological evidence to this. The brain, the human brain, is not fully developed until your mid-20s. So unless you are 25, 28 plus, you really should not be making you shouldn't be having the ultimate say in choices of, health and longevity and what makes sense for the kitchen. Because the kitchen, that's the room where lives are saved and relationships are cemented. Relationships, you form strong bonds right there in the kitchen. And you're either feeding life into people or feeding death into your family members. You choose, right? Do you love your kids? Do you love your partner, right? That's all being dictated by what you offer, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And we can talk more about this too in the training, but today I really just want to focus in on inflammation. So inflammation, let me get this actually on the screen. Inflammation in the body anywhere is going to affect the brain. All right, so, and that can come from a ton of different things. First of all, trans fat, animal protein, which we now know there's scientific evidence that animal protein is damaging to our cells, Also, hormones, right? If you're eating cow and drinking cow's milk and things like this, there are hormones and things that you are consuming, plus added cholesterol. We make our own cholesterol, right? As an animal, we're making our own cholesterol. We really don't need to eat cholesterol outside of us. All of these things are contributing factors that affect brain health. Gum health, for having healthy gums, healthy teeth, your dental hygiene is really important here, because it affects the blood, right? It affects the blood, and if it affects the blood, it's going to affect the brain. You can test for C-reactive protein. This is a test to get a reading on the markers of inflammation. So the markers of inflammation are C-reactive proteins that they're able to track when you're dealing with inflammation over a chronic, prolonged period of time. Because acute inflammation, this is natural, right? Where you will, let's say you bump your toe or something like that, and it hurts. It starts to swell. It turns red. It starts to swell. Because the body, there's inflammation there, right? The blood is all, congregating there, and it's healing. This is a natural process. This is a healthy process. Now, if you're having inflammation in the body for months on end, this is no good, because it's ultimately damaging the body long term. And so you want to test for that and do something about it, right? Reverse that, whatever it is that's going on. Increasing your omega-3 fatty acids is really important, and you can test for your omega-3s to make sure that you are at the appropriate levels. Now, knowing your labs, like what labs, I've talked about a lot of different things. Cardiovascular health, I mentioned cholesterol, C-reactive protein, all of this information. When you sign up for the Beat Stress Eating training, it's in your workbook on all the labs you need to run to optimize brain function, right? Brain function equates to mental health. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. It's not just about your ability to be smart and intelligent, right? But also your ability to be a lovely, kind, loving person, and to be joyful and happy and have a great quality of life, right? We want to eliminate trans fats. Yes, trans fats technically have been banned in America, but it's still showing up, because when you cook certain oils beyond a certain temperature, they turn into trans fats. So it's still showing up. If you're eating processed foods and ultra processed foods, you are consuming trans fats. You're consuming omega-6, lots of omega-6. Now, omega-6 we naturally will have in our food supply, in our body. It's not too bad if it's in balance. We need way more omega-3 than omega-6, but with the standard American diet, more folks are having a ton of omega-6 and very little omega-3. And omega-3s is what's going to keep your brain right, keep your brain healthy, keep your mental health sharp, right? And where do you get omega-3s? You can get it from where the fish gets its omega-3. So I made a post on Instagram today in my Instagram stories that fish is not a health food. I know some people think, because a lot of folks who talk about brain health talk about fish, but somehow then they stop the research on what's going on in our environment right now, right? We are not living in the 1900s, okay? We are now post 1940. 1940, I believe it was when actually, was it 1940 that it came out or was banned? I can't even remember. But in the 40s, DDT was out there, basically. And when they were spraying DDT all over farmland, they said, you know what, it's fine. It's not going to cause any health issues. And in America, this is how we tend to operate. We tend to let chemicals fly and then wait till people die in large numbers or get sick or have injuries. Then they sue the federal government, and then they decide then to ban a thing, right? That's kind of like how we do it. It's like trial by fire, where basically folks are being tested on in real life without their consent, okay? And so this is basically what happened with DDT. Now we're at a space where it's banned, However, people are still consuming DDT, getting DDT exposure in their bodies through fish consumption because it's in our waterways. I don't know if you've ever heard of PFAS chemicals, but that's another reason why most of us have PFAS in our blood. These are forever chemicals that have been shown to cause birth issues, all sorts of, systemic issues, inflammation, reproductive health issues, cancer, and all this kinds of stuff, right? There's all these things attached to the PFAS chemicals, which I've talked about extensively on the Raw Food Health Empowerment podcast. But it's already been released. It's already been put out there. Right now, I believe the Biden administration is trying to do something to curtail it or whatever. But the acronym, it stands for, not the acronym. The terminal, how we talk about PFAS chemicals is that it's a forever chemical because it stays within the environment and there's no way to get rid of it. This is where we are right now. It was already released and now we're in a situation where there's no way to get rid of it. There's no way to contain it. And so now we're trying to, put the cat back in the bag, and, it's a really interesting, tough situation, but this is historically how America has seemed to work, even with all our governmental agencies. But I digress, obviously, beyond this. But it's hard to talk about inflammation, the body, and the brain without talking about these environmental toxins and how we ended up in this place, right? We really need the government to pay attention to how they've been doing things in the past and not doing that anymore. We need long-term studies in a contained manner with consent before we just start releasing chemicals out into the environment, because now we're in a situation where the waterways aren't clean. People used to enjoy eating fish. Fish is not a health food, right? Other than the mercury, and there's a reason why that's there, right? That has to do with toxins in the environment as well, why there's heavy mercury in the fish. But you also have microplastics in the fish, which we are also consuming. What's wrong with plastic? Well, it's an endocrine disruptor. It's an obesogenic chemical, meaning if you are on a fat loss journey, or if you are a woman, or if you are a man, right? Any human, we have hormones. And consuming endocrine disruptors puts our hormones out of balance, out of whack. And that impacts how we feel, how we behave, how we think. It's having lots of impacts on our society right now. And detrimentally, it's affecting, with fertility and things of that nature, right? Also, like we're talking about, brain function, mental health, and mental well-being, feelings of depression. I don't know if you've ever heard of premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is basically where menstruating women fall into a depression on a cyclical nature every month before menstruating. And that has to do with hormonal imbalance. It doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Why is the hormones imbalance? And it's because of this. There's a lot of reasons why, but when you get to that severe state, it's usually something like this, an environmental toxin. And sometimes the outside environment, we are bringing it inside through food, right? And through the products that we put on our bodies, because our skin is how we're taking the outside in to us, right? We have pores, these chemicals come in, and then they get into the bloodstream, and then they can affect the brain. Some of it becomes permeable, right? Breaks through the blood-brain barrier and affects us mentally that way. What else did I not touch on this list? So we're talking about omega-3 food. So the fish gets its omega-3 from algae, and you can get an algae-based supplement if you really feel like you want to take a supplement. I'm part of the no pill party, okay? I don't swallow pills because, one, I can't. And so two, I choose not to because I can't, right? I have a lot of trauma around that, and so I don't. So where do I get my omega-3s? From healthy food sources, which are some 5 main sources. I have a couple on here. If you want to learn more, definitely come to the Beat Stress Eating training. But as long as you're eating plant rich, that's great. I need you to also make sure you're including omega-3 foods, rich foods, on a daily basis in your diet. And I'm gonna wrap up real quick because I have a really important meeting after this. But I actually go into detail on all this stuff in my Beat Stress Eating training, so you could sign up for that. I have a link in the description to this video, and if you're watching on Instagram Live, you could go into my link in bio and register that way, or just go to rawfoodmealplanner.com. It's right there on the main page. But to heal inflammation in the body, you also want to fix leaky gut, right? Because if your gut is permeable, which we go into detail in the training, you are not even absorbing the nutrients from the foods that you're eating. So you're running the risk of nutrient deficiency. Also, your immune system overreacts, right? So we want to make sure we heal the gut lining, and we do that with a healthy, clean diet, prebiotic foods and probiotic foods. If you're having difficulty with fiber-rich, nutrient-rich foods, then a probiotic supplement may even be helpful in that transition. I've used it. I know some people say that, not some people, a lot of people, a lot of these supplements, these probiotic supplements have been shown in research to not be that effective. However, I think quality matters a lot. And there's one in particular that I've used in the past that actually was really helpful for me in my transition. So it's something to keep in mind. We don't have to really throw the concept out completely, but you do have other options. You could just lean into those probiotic foods. Now, like I said, I'm going to go into more detail on all this stuff in the Beat Stress Eating training. So I do have on the screen, if depending on where you are, where you're seeing this, there's a QR code that you can scan to register for the Beat Stress Eating training. If you can't see it, like if you're on Instagram, then just head on over to rawfoodmealplanner.com and register, and we'll dive in. And make sure to come with questions, because I have a full day designated for Q&A and some light coaching. So make sure to be there. All right, take care. Have a blessed day.